Hi, the name is King X, and for this 100 sub special, I'm going to go off script for once. And I'm also going to be doing what if Deku was awful. Not what if Deku was awful one, but what if Deku had awful one. Yeah, I know this is such a cliche. This is such a cliche idea. Give him like the big bad's power. Oh well, I don't care. Anyways, on with the story. Izuku was 4 years old when he first discovered this quirk. He first discovered it in preschool. He was playing hero and villain. He was playing hero versus villains in his preschool. Bakugo, the boy who had activated his quirk first, was the hero. Izuku, who seemed to be a late bloomer at the time, because he had yet to activate his quirk, was the villain. The boys The boys were all ganging up on him as he was the villain. Heroes were supposed to win all the time, not the villains. But Izuku never liked to be the villain. Uh, Izuku hated being the villain actually. These kids would always attack him, beat him up. Next thing you know, he would come home with burn marks, scratch marks, all of the sort, always worrying his mother. He never liked to see his mother worry about him so much. One day, he grabbed Bakugo's hands, well, more specifically his wrists, and telling him to stop hurting him so much. Bakugo growled at Izuku before kicking him to the ground. Izuku felt something weird though, some sort of strange aura, or some sort of strange feeling erupting in his hands. Next thing you know, boom! Oh, jeez. All of a sudden, explosions came bursting out of his hands. He aimed them at Bakugo, wondering what was going on. Why did he have Bakugo's quirk all of a sudden? Bakugo was confused as well. Before he was launched down to the ground. He tried feeling for his quirk, trying to create explosions from his hands, but for some reason, nothing was working. All of that's everything. Nothing was working. He looked at Izuku with an angry glare. Did this boy really steal his quirk? He demanded for the boy to give it back. Izuku didn't know how though. He only knew that for some reason he now had Bakugo's quirk. All of the kids around him scattered. They were afraid the boy may steal their quirks as well. Izuku was labeled a villain from there on outwards. Izuku eventually learned how to give back quirks to other people. Bakugo still saw him as a villain though. They were no longer friends. Bakugo refused to even talk to him or even look at him. All Bakugo knew was that Izuku was a villain who could steal quirks. He couldn't care if the boy was able to give back quirks. He was a villain. He had a villain's quirk. And as far as he was concerned, he didn't want anything to do with the boy. Izuku would try and plead his case multiple times, saying that he wasn't a villain, that a quirk doesn't define a person, but nobody paid attention, no one cared. All they knew was that this boy was a threat. They couldn't afford to hang around him, or else their quirks may be stolen as well. Years would go by, with Izuku becoming a social outcast. Izuku would feel so alone during these times. No one to talk to besides his parents, and even then, he saw the way his mother looked at him. and she had a different look in her eyes than she did when he was 4. Before he activated his quirk, before he became able to steal quirks, his mother had such soft eyes for him, but now those eyes were shallow. It was as if she was broken a little. He wondered why, though. Years would go by with him asking her, why? Why did people treat him the way they did? She would tell them, she would tell him that people feared what they didn't understand. Izuku will always be so confused about this. Why would people fear the unknown? He started testing his abilities more and more often, stealing quirks from villains. He would steal quirks from people who didn't deserve their quirks. All those low lives who would either bully people, murder people, all of the criminals he would steal quirks from. He was able to collect quite a few quirks during this time. He was able to also give other people these quirks as well. Some he noticed that he could force upon. This was something that he found to be interesting. For one, he was able to find a quirk that seemed to be able to manipulate the muscles. This quirk was able to manipulate the muscle fibers, able to greatly amplify them. He stole them from a villain who just killed a couple heroes. He hated these sort of people with a passion. He stole this quirk, leaving this man dead, leaving this man an empty husk. He stole this quirk. He was interested in this quirk for a little bit, but he found it to be a bit too disturbing. Manipulating muscle fibers, having them pop out of your skin and cover your body, that was a bit too weird for him. He gave it to somebody who really deserved this quirk. He gave it to others who would deserve quirks, such as that muscular quirk. He gave it to somebody who was also quirkless. They could have been able to use this quirk for much better uses, become a hero for all he cared. He saw how even heroes would look at him sometimes when they found out he could steal quirks. They were scared of him. They were actually quite terrified of him. He had run-ins with some heroes from time to time. He became a vigilante in order to steal quirks, in order to learn more about his quirk. How else could he be able to use his quirk? Because all these people, they thought that he was a villain. He was not allowed to use his quirk. He wasn't able to use anything. He was labeled as a villain because of something that he couldn't control. How was he going to be able to become a hero if he wasn't even able to use this quirk most of the time? He started stealing quirks from several vigilantes, several villains, so many people. He started to become obsessed with it. He couldn't care anymore. These people labeled him something that he couldn't control. It wasn't his fault. People started labeling him as a quirk thief, as the next coming of villainy, as the next headmaster. Several names he went by as a vigilante, but he didn't seem to care. He just wanted all these quirks that he could give to other people who really deserved them. All of those who were shunned for being quirkless, all of those who were shunned for having supposedly weak quirks. Everybody who deserved a better handout in life, he was going to be the person who could do such a thing. He was also going to become a hero, a better hero than even All Might. That was something that he vowed to be able to do. I keep on saying years. 10 years pass. Izuku is now 14. The teacher comes into the room saying how everybody wants to be heroes. Everybody cheered, but Bakugo announced that he was going to be attending UA. He was going to be the best of the best. He was going to surpass All Might. The teacher admitted that with Bakugo scores, he could probably get into UA quite easily, especially with his quirk. He said that everybody else had useless quirks. Some people mentioned Deku. That was what people would call him. This time, though, Deku meant something different. This is what they would call Izuku. This was an abbreviation of Demon Izuku. Demon or Devil Izuku. That was their abbreviation of the name. This was a title that Deku didn't care for. He let them call him that because that was as much attention as he was gonna get. And just so long as he wasn't being so isolated, he didn't care. But he knew what was going on in the background. He knew that people were starting to think that he was that vigilante. They were right in assuming that. They had a right to be scared because he would be taking quirks from any and all people who didn't deserve them. He would give them to other people who truly did. And that was his slogan. Take quirks take quirks from the people who don't deserve them. Give to the people who do. That's what he would say all the time as a vigilante. He had a voice modulated quirk as well, on top of multiple other quirks. He had a drill quirk, a strength enhancer quirk, several others that he wouldn't name right now. When the teacher announced that Izuku was planning on going to UA, there was no laughter this time around. People just looked at Deku in fear. Some actually announced that he couldn't go into UA. He had a villain's quirk. He was a villain. UA would not allow him to go and become part of their campus. They wouldn't allow him to be one of their students. Izuku disagreed with them, arguing back and forth. Nobody would allow him the time of day. Nobody would actually listen to him. All they ever saw was a villain. But was he? Was he really? Or were they the villains for not even giving him the chance to prove himself? Izuku would go on to hear Bakugo claim that he should just give up on trying to be a hero. He was a villain after all. He had a villain's quirk. Being able to steal quirks from other people, that was what a villain would do. Only villains steal from other people. Izuku decided not to listen to Bakugo though. Izuku decided not to listen to him. He decided not to listen to anyone because all of them were wrong. Everybody was wrong about him. They were always going to say that he was a villain, but he needed to prove himself. When Bakugo tried to launch an explosion at Izuku, but Izuku dodged out of the way. The teacher called off everything, telling Bakugo to go to the principal's office because Izuku had a quirk in this timeline. The teacher actually kind of cared for him. If he was quirkless, nobody would really care for him. They would see him as just another useless person in the world. Just another part of the 20% of people who should apparently just die. And who should just wish for a quirk in a better timeline. Especially him. Especially with a villain's quirk. And every time he heard this, he would just grip his fists. His veins would start to pop. He would walk home only to encounter a sludge villain. This guy would try and take over his body, but Izuku stole his quirk, leaving him in a weird state, leaving him looking like a normal human. Well, a normal human 100 years ago, that is. Sorry, Jordan. Or at least 100 years ago. He had some greenish hair, but he looked completely lifeless. All of a sudden, he heard a voice that was all too familiar to him. All Might. He heard that famous catchphrase of him. He heard that famous catchphrase of his, that he was here. But with his life, Izuku really lost a bit of passion for heroes. All Might was one of those rare exceptions. He tried to get All Might's attention, asking him if he could be a hero, even with a quirk like his own. All Might looked at him in confusion, asking the boy what his quirk was, what the quirk did, all of that. Izuku gulped, worrying about how All Might would respond. He told him everything, though. He told him how he had an apparent villain's quirk, how he was able to steal quirks from other people and give them to others as well. He admitted that he was a vigilante. He admitted everything to All Might. All Might sighed. And this was a tough case. He knew that All For One still was probably out there. He doubted All For One really went down that day. But he knew for a fact that there was a possibility others like All For One were out there. This boy had the same exact quirk. Maybe there were a few differences, but he decided to really think about it. He took a kneel, looking at the boy, and told him that, well, yes, no quirk was immediately a villain's quirk. It really all depended on how you used the quirk, whether you were going to be a villain or a hero. He told the boy that no, because his quirk may be able to steal other quirks doesn't automatically make him a villain. But being a vigilante, if he ever wanted to be a true hero, he had to stop doing that. He couldn't afford to keep on stealing other people's quirks like that. At best, he could do something, though. He was willing to train him for the next couple of months, help him build up his body, help him to actually gain other quirks from different people who either didn't want them or were criminals. Oh my goodness. Or were criminals, essentially. He would be able to get access to many more quirks this way. He never knew how the government really worked with such quirks, but he decided that with such a great power, such a power like Izuku's own, he couldn't afford to let that go to waste. He couldn't afford for someone to become the next All For One, the next big bad of Japan. He saw potential in Izuku. If he actually trained the boy, if he could actually turn this boy into a hero, he could probably become the next symbol of peace, right alongside whoever was going to be his successor. Such passion in the boy's eyes, though. That was what amazed him. And this was something that really made him think more. Think less of the villain All For One, and look at a boy who was dealt a bad hand in life, who was given what was essentially a quirk that everybody else viewed as villainous. Look, guys, I know that this was a kind of cringy what if, especially with how I didn't actually, how should I say it, make a script for this one. I just went off of my head this time around, which I'm not too great at doing, at least not yet. But I wanted to start uploading more frequently at a faster rate. This was the best way that I could do it. Tell me your suggestions in the comments below. And remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button. Also, the majority of you are not subscribed to me. Only like 29% of you guys are, or like 21% actually. Please subscribe to this channel. I will greatly appreciate it. King Titan X out.